Back in the 1990s, South Central Los Angeles was a war zone. Due to widespread unemployment and poverty, the number of street gangs grew to an all-time high. With so many rivaling street gangs in one area, the death toll in South Central Los Angeles was through the roof. But not only was there warfare between gangs, there was also warfare with the police. Following a jury's decision to acquit 4 police officers of the brutal beating of Rodney King, Los Angeles fell into chaos. Shortly after the vicious beatdown of Rodney King went unpunished, the LA riots took place. The riots lasted from April to May of 1992. Widespread looting, assault, and arson occurred during the riots, which local police forces had difficulty controlling due to lack of personnel and resources. The situation in the Los Angeles area was resolved only after the California National Guard, United States military, and several federal law enforcement agencies were deployed to assist in ending the violence and unrest. By the time the riots ended, 63 people had been killed, 2,383 had been injured, and more than 12,000 had been arrested. An estimate of property damage was over $1 billion. As you can see, Los Angeles was a crazy place in the 90s. And in the background, Los Angeles became a breeding ground for killers. And the killer in this video goes by the name Regis Deon Thomas. But before we get into the video, please be sure to leave a like as it will boost the video in the YouTube algorithm, and please be sure to subscribe. Regis Deon Thomas was born on June 16, 1970. He was the oldest of 4 children and grew up in South Central Los Angeles. He was a member of the Bounty Hunter Blood Street Gang, a blood subset based out of Watts, Los Angeles, California. During his time as a member of the Bloods, Regis Deon Thomas would grow the appetite of a killer. In January 1992, Carlos Adkins was shot to death in the apartment of Janice Chappelle, located in the Nickerson Gardens housing project in Los Angeles. Andre and Janice Chappelle and their friend Bertrand Dixon witnessed the shooting. Dixon, who was visiting Andre Chappelle, went out to purchase some cigarettes. When returning, he thought he heard someone call out his nickname. Believing it to be his friend Romeo, he responded by calling out, "Romeo down here?" Regis, who was driving by, called out to him, "You don't know me. Don't try to sell me something." Dixon explained that he had not been talking to Regis. As he was walking towards the Chappelle's apartment, Dixon saw Regis pointing a gun at him from the window of his car. Dixon went inside the apartment where Adkins was playing chess with Andre. He heard a banging at the door, and then Andre opened the door and Regis entered, making angry remarks. Regis had a gun at his side. Dixon explained that he was calling to his friend Romeo and had not been trying to sell anything to Regis. Carlos Adkins then stood up. Regis asked him what he was going to do, stating, "I know you're a Tillman," and hit Adkins with the gun. Adkins stated that he was not named Tillman, and Regis told him to shut up. Janice Chappelle, who had been asleep upstairs, was awakened by the sounds of arguing and walked downstairs. She observed Regis, Adkins, Andre, and Dixon in the living room. Regis appeared to be angry, and Andre appeared to be trying to calm him down. Regis started to leave the apartment, and as he was walking to the door, he apologized to Janice for the disturbance and stated that the men in the apartment didn't know who he was. Dixon thought he heard Regis identify himself as Renzi. Adkins then stated to Regis, "You don't know who I am either." Regis came back inside, placed the gun between Adkins' eyes and threatened to blow his brains out. Adkins grabbed the gun and a struggle ensued, during which 2 shots were fired. Dixon ran out of the apartment and called 911. When he went to meet the ambulance, he was stopped by Regis and another man. They told him not to say anything about the incident and pistol whipped him. The 2 men forced Dixon into the trunk of their car at gunpoint, but Dixon got out and ran away. Adkins subsequently died of a gunshot wound to the right lower chest. The next day, Dixon informed his parole officer that he had witnessed a shooting and was advised to contact the police. When he initially met with police, he described the shooting and told the officers that the shooter's name was Renzi. Subsequently, Dixon met with a local man named Renzi, who Dixon knew was not the killer. He informed the police that he had learned that the correct name was Reggie. Dixon identified Regis's picture in a photographic display and later selected him during a live lineup. Janice Chappelle also picked Regis's picture from a photographic display, indicating that he looked like the man who shot Carlos Adkins. Several months later, Regis was identified during a traffic stop and arrested on a warrant for the shooting of Carlos Adkins. In September of 1992, Dixon, who was then incarcerated, was transported to the Compton courthouse for Regis's preliminary hearing. He was placed in a holding cell with Regis, who asked him why he was going to testify. Regis stated that he had not meant to do it and that it had been his girlfriend's birthday and he had argued with her and was upset. He just went off. Regis told Dixon that Dixon didn't want to end up like Andre Chappelle, who was shot and killed in March of 1992. Dixon was aware that Andre had died. He understood Regis to be saying that if he testified, he could not go back to the projects. Regis offered to give Dixon $5,000 if he turned the other cheek. Dixon told the prosecutors that he had identified the wrong man and Regis was released. Regis was subsequently recharged with the murder of Adkins. At trial, Dixon identified Regis as the person who shot Adkins. Dixon had been promised that if he testified, he would serve his sentence outside Los Angeles County if he were convicted on a pending burglary charge. Janice Chappelle also testified that Regis looked like the person who shot Adkins, stating that she was 98% certain he was the man. Andre Chappelle did not testify because he had been shot and killed in the Nickerson Gardens housing project in March of 1992. The jury found Regis guilty of the second-degree murder of Carlos Adkins. On the night of February 22nd, 1993, at about 11 p.m., Compton police officer Kevin Michael Burrell, age 29, and reserve officer James Wayne McDonald, age 24, made a routine traffic stop in Compton at the intersection of Rosecrans Avenue and Dwight Avenue on a red 1992 Chevrolet 454 pickup truck being driven by Regis. As the officers exited their patrol car and approached the pickup truck, Regis exited his vehicle and opened fire on both officers. Both officers were knocked down to the ground by bullet wounds to their limbs. According to trial testimony, Regis shot at their heads execution style. Both officers were wearing bulletproof vests and were found lying face down near their patrol car with their guns holstered. There were 9 spent 9mm shell casings in front of the patrol car. Burrell died of multiple gunshot wounds to the arm, face, left foot, and head. McDonald was also shot 4 times in his left armpit, middle back, upper back, and behind the right ear, and died of a gunshot wound to the chest. After the shootings, Regis returned to his truck and drove away. Regis's wife, Deshauna Cody Thomas, testified that on the evening of the day the officers were killed, Regis left her apartment in his red pickup truck, stating that he was going to his mother's house in Nickerson Gardens. When she woke up the next morning, Regis was in bed with her and he had a gun in his hand. Regis's friend Keon Pye testified that sometime in February of 1993, Regis arrived at her house and asked her to hold a gun for him. He gave her a gun wrapped in a bag and she placed it under her mattress. The next day, a man she had never seen before came and picked up the gun. That man, Calvin Cooksley, testified that on February 24th or 25th, he was at the apartment of his cousin, Philip Cathcart, in Gardena. Regis, who was a very close friend of Cooksley's cousin, arrived at the apartment. Cooksley was watching a news broadcast relating to the shooting of the two officers. Cooksley looked at Regis, who appeared to be jittery, and Regis said, "Yeah, I did it. They slipped." Cooksley understood that slipped meant that the officers failed to take precautions. Regis told Cooksley that when Officer Bureau approached the truck, Regis kicked the door open and shot him in the chest. He then shot Officer McDonald in the face while he was still in the police car. He then shot each of the officers 3 more times. Cooksley told Regis he did not believe him, but shortly thereafter, he asked Regis where the gun was and offered to dispose of it. Regis showed Cooksley a house and told Cooksley to return there later to obtain the gun. When Cooksley returned, the woman in the house gave him a bag which contained a 9mm pistol. He sold the gun to Robert Rojas. In early March 1993, Regis was questioned in connection with the shooting of the officers but was released. He told Cooksley, "They think I did it, but they can't prove it. Somebody is going to have to tell on me in order for them to bust me on this." In mid-March 1993, Cooksley was arrested while in possession of a firearm. A few days later, Cooksley called a sheriff's deputy with whom he was familiar as a result of a prior arrest and told him that he knew who had killed the officers and that he knew the location of the gun used in the shooting. Cooksley told the deputy that the name of the killer was Reggie, or Regis Thomas. He described the sale of the gun. In a subsequent discussion with another deputy, Cooksley asked for help with his pending charges and told the deputy about the sale of the gun and about the conversation in which Regis admitted to shooting the officers. Shortly thereafter, Cooksley was released from county jail and accompanied by a detective, he located Rojas. Cooksley told Rojas he wanted to buy back the gun. Rojas contacted Cooksley the next day and informed him that he could get the gun. Cooksley met Rojas, paid for the gun, and gave it to the detective. Ballistics evidence indicated that the cartridge casings found at the scene of the shootings of the officers were fired from that gun. McDonald, a Compton native, and Bureau, a 5-year police veteran, were the first police officers killed on duty in the history of the Compton police force. McDonald was killed during his last ever shift as a volunteer officer on the Compton force. A massive manhunt ensued after the officers' deaths, which led to 5 arrests in other cases, solving 3 murders and 2 attempted killings. Compton police officers Timothy M. Brennan and Robert Ladd were a part of the task force that was formed in the wake of the murders that ultimately led to the arrest and conviction of Thomas. Thomas was captured on April 6, 1993, when he surrendered to a broadcast news reporter. He was found guilty of the murders and was sentenced to death on August 15, 1995. He is currently on death row, awaiting execution, and is imprisoned at San Quentin State Prison. Let me know what you guys think of this situation in the comment section, and please be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.